I was impoverished and deeply in debt at the time. So I decided to turn my lawn mowing business into a full-time business as something that could hopefully fund a multi-million-dollar research institute. I give my phone number and email address to 5,500 franchisees, and people say that's lunatic, but it's actually quite sensible because, first of all, because I can help them individually, and that's the core moral purpose of my business. I don't personally have very great spending needs. I'm extremely stingy. For example, these shoes that I'm wearing, that's $10 from Kmart. So that's me. If I can find something cheap, I'll use it. I amaze the customer, and that makes me feel good. People know I mean it because I walk the walk. I don't just talk about it, I do it. Giving your money away is actually the best thing you can do with money to make yourself happy. You actually get an enormous boost of happiness from helping other people when you're involved with what you're doing. My franchisees don't work for me, I work for them. They're my clients, they're my family.
So I'm Alex Ward. I am a messaging expert, I'm a keynote speaker and the founder of Core Story. And I work with leaders and brands to help them speak with guts, heart, and real clarity. And essentially that's what this podcast is all about. It's an extension of that. Welcome to another episode of Naked at the Top. Today I'm joined by Jim Penman. Hi Jim, how are you?
Good to be here.
Thanks for joining me. So it's absolutely amazing to have you here. You're obviously known for the founder of Jim's Group and Jim's Mowing, and you've got up to 5,500 franchisees around Australia. Yeah. But what really surprised me was how Jim's Mowing started, and it was to fund your research. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I've actually done gardening work since I was 8 years old. Most of my childhood, I had gardening jobs. And in 1971, I left school. I took a gap year, and I got a couple of garden jobs for putting a notice in the local hardware store. And through my studies, my bachelor's and my PhD, I just kept on developing that. Started with gardening, water, lawn mowing, a lawnmower. Intended to be an academic. That was what I really thought I was going to do. And then when I got to the end of my academic career, I really had no prospect of any kind of job. So I decided to turn my lawn mowing business into something that could hopefully eventually fund the research program I wanted to continue.
So what was it about the research that really fascinated you? Because it was ancient history and biology, is that correct?
Yeah. I was interested in basically the reason for the collapse of civilization, why they fall, which is anything, what happens, why they rise, why they fall. Started off looking at sociology, decided that was rubbish, went to history, and then got involved in cross-cultural anthropology and a bit of biology and psychology and all kinds of things, just trying to understand patterns, and came up with what I thought was an approach that made a lot of sense, that really understanding what was going on, and wanted to continue that. But my interests had changed into neuroscience. I decided that the character was the thing, and that had a biological basis. So you need a neuroscience. Now I'm a historian. I don't have any skills in that sort of area. I don't have any money. I was impoverished and deeply in debt at the time. So I just decided to turn my part-time lawn mowing business into a full-time business as something that could hopefully, in the end, fund a multi-million-dollar research institute.
Wow.
I must have seemed rather unlikely, but it's kind of what happened in the end.
You made it happen.
Yeah.
So what were you thinking back then when you first started it? Did you think you had any chance to build it into the success that it is today?
Well, not probably lawn mowing. That was the thing. I thought lawn mowing was the only thing I knew how to do. And I thought there'd be something else that I could get engaged in. I hadn't go at Amway at the time, which is terrible. I was hopeless at that. I tried different things. Like I had a computer shop at one time, a mower shop, tried to get a holiday resort going. I've done various things over the years. It's just this lawn mowing gig just turned out to be surprisingly successful. But I didn't really understand how it could be at the beginning. I didn't envisage the idea of having thousands of franchisees would have just been beyond my comprehension. Well, all I ever did was look at what I was doing and say, how can I do it better? How can I improve?
Mm.
Little things
Mm.
like when you're mowing a lawn and you got to pick up the grass. How do you actually pick up your grass with the least step? If I can save one step in emptying my grass bag, my grass bin into a grass bag, I can save time or get around the tree a bit quicker or navigate between buildings or hire people better or work out better forms of advertising. So it's thousands of little tiny experiments just trying to figure out how to do this business better and making lots and lots of mistakes and just gradually learning.
Mm. So were you constantly just conjuring up different ideas of how you can make improvements? Yeah. Yeah.
When I was mowing the lawns, I was always thinking about improving what I was doing, always obsessively like that all the time. I still do today, every day of my life, including holidays, including Christmas Day. It doesn't matter what day it is. I'm always in my mind, what can I do better? It's just that obsessional need to improve, I think which I think actually is more to do with success than having some great brain waves. People think you got some genius that says, oh, well, why don't I franchise or do this and this and this? And it's just not like that. It's tiny things that count. I give my phone number and email address to 5,500 franchisees, and people say that's lunatic, but it's actually quite sensible because, first of all, because I can help them individually, and that's really the core moral purpose of my business. But also, they give me ideas all the time. What's going wrong? Why is this person not succeeding? What do we need to do to help them? How can we train better? How can we coach them better? How can we improve our systems, our IT systems? Just always being in touch with the grassroots is very powerful that way. And I think a lot of leaders probably neglect that. They're too involved in. I see that very often. People get involved and they look at reports and they're on spending time on the computer. I just find it's very useful to know what people are doing, what's going wrong. Because to us, the ultimate success is franchisee being successful. And that's the base of everything. If franchisee is successful, they want to stay with us. Others will come and join us, look after customers, and the customers will come back and it just grows and grows and grows. But the core to us is the franchisee being successful. And so you can never spend too much time thinking about that.
Yeah. And I like what you say, being connected with them, having those conversations is so important. It's the same as, with your business, being connected with the customer and actually listening to the feedback and making improvements that way. It's
I
so
also get
crucial.
involved with customers too. I have a policy: if a customer rings a second time about a problem that's not fixed, he comes to me personally and they'll look at it, which I can help to solve problems and keep people on their toes. But at the same time, it also helps them to understand what's going wrong. Why is this person getting repeated mistakes? What can we do about it? How can we improve what we do?
Mm. Is there a moment in time where you have been connected with the customer or the franchisee and it's made a big change or improvement in your business that you can call?
I don't know about big changes, but look, you have a case. Okay, let me give you an example where a franchisee has got a problem with a franchisor who's being dictatorial. But that's an issue because sometimes franchisors can get powerful. We have regional franchisors, look after franchisees. So one particular franchisee rang me up about a franchisor being very dictatorial, just clamping down the dissent. So they weren't doing anything wrong by the manual. They just really weren't helping the business at all. They weren't helping the franchisees because of this attitude. So what I did is I made a negotiation. I found out there was a wider problem, not just this one guy had a problem with it. And then I went to the franchisor and I made a deal with him. And I forget exactly what the incentive was, but I actually got them to change the contract. But basically what it said was that if the majority of franchisees in his region weren't happy with him, then he would have to sell his business, regional franchise, which he didn't think was the case because he thought everybody liked him because they never dared to say anything against him. So he agreed to that, but he didn't. I warned him. He didn't change his ways, and so the net result was he got voted out. And that became part of our standard contract. The regional franchisors can be voted out by their franchisees. It's one of the unique things about our system, which actually puts an awful lot of pressure on franchisors to consider franchisees as clients. Have a single phone call. One person who just called me and said, I've got a problem with my franchisor. So we do something that actually has major impact.
Yeah, that's amazing. And ultimately, it comes down to looking after the franchisees and making sure everyone, does right by them. And then that has a flow-on effect with the customers as well, right?
Yeah, and people find it very strange that I spend my time doing things like that. But in fact, I'm not particularly skilled at most things. Stuff like, I don't know how IT works. I know what it's supposed to do. I'm not financially very, very literate. I've never done a business plan in my life, but so I don't even use social media personally at all. We have a great social media team working. But things are not my strengths. So my strength is being in touch with people, finding out what's going wrong. How can I help you? Why is this working? What can we do? How can we do it better for you? And I do this all the time. Just franchisees approaching me about certain kinds of issues. Now, we've got a tremendous library for franchisees of advice from different divisions about different subjects like social media, paperwork guarantee, and different divisions and all kinds of different issues. And I had franchisees approaching me about these, but it was difficult to find them. So I went to Joel, that you may have been in contact with through social media, and I said, okay, can we put them in categories? So now this happened just about 6 months ago. So now there's categories for each one of them. So I can refer people to individually to say, go and have a look at these videos in this category. And they have directors were asking me for help. And I decided that was a better way to help them. So that's been very useful. So probably more than several times a week, a franchisee approaches me and I say, well, go and see the videos here because they're going to help you a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So do you find people are quite comfortable opening up to you and sharing their problems, asking questions?
Well, I'm not sort of like an agony aunt. These are specific questions about business. I haven't got enough leads, for example. I haven't got enough income. These are common ones. So I have different ways of, and then I get the responses too. So I give talks at training. Like I get the first talk at training and the last talk at our franchisee induction training. So I things that I learn from my franchisees, I introduce into those sessions to try and teach them in advance to help them. Because what we found is that the training itself is quite successful. It actually dramatically reduces conversion rate. We used to lose about 1 in 70% of our franchisees in the first year. To put that in perspective, if you go into independent cleaning or gardening business, you've got about a 90% chance of failing in the first year. With us, it was just about 17%. And then we put the training course in and we dropped that first year, we did down to 10.5%. So more than a third of the people who were leaving in the first year weren't leaving because we started to train them better, this kind of thing.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing, the difference in the numbers. It's just about having that support and the right training around you. It's fantastic. I'd love to go back and get a little bit more insight into what you were like growing up. During my research, I kind of gathered that you're a bit of a rebel. You like to kind of go against the main point of view. Could you give us a little bit of insight into what little Jim was like?
Oh, very socially awkward, extremely introverted, having terrible crushes on girls, which never went anywhere. So very tormented. Didn't go with my father very well at that time. We did later. Just very rebellious. I was at school. I went to a sort of very conservative Christian school and got into trouble by basically taking issues with the powers that be and compulsory chapel and people who were stupid enough to believe in God and this kind of stuff, which is quite ironic. 10 years later, I became a very fervent Christian. Switch sides, but at school, and I would always take the opposite point of view. I mean, I would argue against anybody. Even when I was like 10 or 11 years old, we were living in England for a year, and I used to have long debates with the rector there about capital punishment and stuff like that. So I was always very argumentative, not very tactful.
It's interesting because you say you're introverted, and I always, when I think of someone introverted, I think shy, and so I wouldn't think somebody that would argue against something. So it's quite an interesting contrast.
There's different kinds of introversion. the different kinds of it. One is being timid and shy and not careful, and then the other one is being very unsocial, disliking social events, being very uncomfortable. And then they tend to correlate. People who are bold and strong-minded tend to be socially outgoing. I've got a very strong, and the bold thing is what's called dominance. Raymond Cattell, the psychologist, has a good say on that one too. He talks about the difference between surgency, which is life as a party type sociability, and dominance, which is strengths of mind. They usually correlate, but I'm actually a very strongly dominant, but very desurgent. Not at all social, but very, very strong-minded. Some people call it a loud introvert, often associated with people who are creative. I hate social events. I really freak me out. My friends would
really?
go to parties and stuff, and I would just not do it.
What is it about? Because I really like that. I love when I meet someone and we have a different point of view. I'm like, oh, interesting. This will be an interesting conversation. But many people then will back away from that if they think, oh, we disagree. Oh, let's avoid that topic. What do you think? What's going through your mind when it's you want to kind of have that debate?
What's going through my mind? Probably not a lot. I'm notoriously tactless. My wife says I've got a case of Asperger's, mild case of Asperger's, because I'm so blind at times. I'll say things that offend people. But they send me emails, and if they want me not to share it, they'll say, do not share, because I just automatically share things. I don't even think about the fact that what somebody said in that email might offend somebody else. I don't hesitate. I just don't think. I just say things. If you see some of the stuff that I put out podcasts like this, I'm very blunt and probably offend an awful lot of people, but it's just me. I'm not very good at being tactful.
Is there any kind of time where it's really backlashed on you?
Oh, lots of times. Well, social skills. Like I've been divorced 3 times, and it's not really me chasing women. It's being impossible to live with, I think, is probably the point. And it's very difficult for women to cope with that. I'm very obsessed with my children. So like with my current wife, and we've been very happily married 24 years, but it's been very difficult for her because I have children from an earlier marriage, and when they come, I'll be so obsessed with them that I wouldn't even notice, kind of thing. And that was very, very, very hurtful. But I just don't see that kind of stuff. I just don't read people very well. I'm very intellectually kind of know a lot of stuff, but I don't apply it very well to real life.
Yeah. How does because you've been married 24 years, is that right? How does your wife must have found ways to work with that?
Well, our relationship has been very stormy. The kind of fights we've had over the years are really legion, I suppose. She's quite a volatile person too. But look, I'm crazy in love with her. That's all I can say. I think she's an amazing woman, gorgeous, my best friend. Best thing that ever happened to me, apart from becoming a Christian, the 2 best things: meeting God, meeting my wife. She's just absolutely the best, and I depend on her a lot, and she on me too.
What do you like to do together, like out with work? Because do you work together? Does she work with you?
Yeah, we do. She helps. She's got businesses of her own. She's a builder, and she's runs a conference center, and she's developing another venture. And she's also helping with my business too. So she's she's a very good back end sort of person. She does the detail work, and I have the visions and the passion and the ideas and the courage to do with anything. And she's got the ability to make it work and find the right people and stuff. So we're very complementary. It's been difficult to learn to work together, but she's amazing. But we have a lot of fun too. We have a very affectionate, sexy love life, you might say. We do a lot of things I wouldn't even mention on a public. We enjoy each other very much, and we have beautiful children together.
How many children do you have together?
We have 4 together.
Yeah, wow.
From previous marriages.
Wow. Yeah, you got 10 children. So I've got 2, and I already think, wow, that's a handful. How do you manage 10 children and business of the size of yours?
I never felt the conflict. I never I would never not see my children or spend time with them. Look, like I'm a fairly busy, but I just drove my son to work this morning. Sorry, to school. So I drove to school. We were having a chat about things, all kinds of stuff about, stuff that he's going through and work and talking about the book I'm reading about bonobos and chimpanzees and stuff. So he's a very wonderful kid. He's very, very creative mind. He's great to talk to. And the way back, listen to a talking book. And I've got to pick him up at school this afternoon. And that's great time. To me, that's just important. I don't think this wonderful saying, no other success can compensate the failure in the home. And I just don't think it matters that much. I don't think making money matters so much that you should ever neglect your family.
Yeah.
If anything, I saw with my wife that she's on the phone than me. We go out to dinner and she's texting and making phone calls, and I threaten to take the phone off her if she doesn't put it down.
Yeah, we have a rule at dinner time. No phones at the table. It's the one we're on. So you would say, it's family first. You schedule the family time first. That's your priority.
Yeah, I do.
And I often say when people say about work-life balance, I think for me it's more of a blend. It's, sometimes you'll need to be in the business more and less in the family, or vice versa. Like, what's your viewpoint on that?
You do what's important, and making money isn't really number one. Look, I'm pretty wealthy anyway, for heaven's sake. I mean, I can fund the research I need to, in more with time. So that's what I need it for. I don't personally have very great spending needs. I'm extremely stingy. Like for example, these shoes that I'm wearing. That's $10 from Kmart. So that's me. If I can find something cheap, I'll use it. I like to buy the in the supermarket. I'll always look at the bottom shelf to see the shop brand stuff, to see what's the cheapest brand.
Have you just always been that way?
On things like books, unlimited book. All my kids' turkeys want a book. I buy them a book. Unlimited fruit. Those are the two things that there's absolutely no limits in our household. And a lot of my friends tend to be missionaries and people like that haven't got any money, so we often shout them for dinner and stuff. So apart from that, I live very, very, very simply. My favorite hobby is actually gardening, and I'd like to grow as much of our own food as possible. I just love to get out there and dig potatoes and plant fruit trees and things. It's just fun.
Yeah, simple. I thought was actually going to be one of my questions for you, a bit of a fun one, but maybe you do. Do you mow your own lawn?
At the farm, I've got a small farm. I do. I use a hand mower actually, which is good. My current place where I'm living has actually got too much grass, and they can do it and look at it with it right on. But yeah, I do. But gardening is fun. I mean, I did it for many years. It's not a bad job, It's outside, it's fresh air, it's in touch with nature. In fact, if you look at what makes people happy, exercise, open air, contact with nature, flexible control of your lifestyle. Gardening business is one of the best possible businesses, and it's actually known that gardeners are amongst the happiest professions.
Yeah, 'cause you're out with nature, you're present in the moment. Yeah.
You have to not mind getting rained on and stuff and getting hot at times and stuff. It's not always physically comfortable, but I think it's a great job. You see the satisfaction of a job being done well.
So you started mowing lawns in 1970. Your slogan back then was most lawns $5. Was there many other lawn mowing businesses at that time?
Oh yeah. Actually, I started originally working in 1970. It was $1.50 an hour, believe it or not.
Wow.
So it was a few years later I got myself a lawnmower. Basically, I wanted to buy a car. It shows you where these things come from. The reason I wanted to buy a car was I thought it would help me with girls. Which it was complete failure. Any good there at all. So I decided to buy a car, and then I bought a lawnmower to help me pay for it. So most lawns, that was $10 an hour because I could do two an hour. So that was pretty great in those days. I bought my first house not too much later for $30,000. So it was, you could do a wonderful lot with $10 an hour back in the 70s.
Yeah. And how easy was it to get clients back then? mow their lawn.
Mostly leaflets, then a few local papers and stuff. Wasn't hard. The key really is I was very fanatical about service. I was always working out ways to make my clients happier. I was trying to be quick. Like, for example, the difficult thing about lawn mowing is mowing the lawn's okay. It's easy, but there's certain things you've got to do. One of them is you've got to pick it up clean. And I got very good at learning how to use a mower to do that, cutting straight lines and doing edges. The toughest thing is edges. I mean, they used to have a wheel, like you go on the concrete mower strip and then you use the mower to suck the grass away and make it look a clean edge. But it used to frustrate me. I couldn't get around the clotheslines and the retaining walls and stuff. And I remember just vividly going into a mower shop where I used to get my stuff fixed and seeing this gadget on the floor, which had a pole with the handle in the middle, engine at one end, and a funny-looking plastic thing with a bit of white cord sticking out. And I said to the guy who ran it, I said, "What's that?" And he said, "It's a brush cutter." I said, "What does it do?" He said, "It's a new idea just out from Japan. You cut the grass without ring bark in the trees." And I bought it on the spot with a lot of money, but it really, really just amazed me because then I could do a job better than clients could do. But I could do it really quick and make it look good. And people would say, "I never knew my lawn could look that good." So I go and put myself a job and pick it up as a regular, and I get the neighbours. I find it quite easy to get jobs because if you get good service, people just flood in. It's not difficult at all. And you don't have to charge cheap either. You just have to be good at what you do. Great job, turn up.
And having customer service at the center of all of that, which is, something that we talked about, at the start of this conversation, is still a big part of what you did today.
It's a very emotional thing for me, actually. I don't, it's not really logical. I'm not sort of thinking if I get better service, I can make more money. I'm thinking I can give better service, I amaze the customer, and that makes me feel good. And I hate letting people down. It's just it's an emotional driver. The same thing with my franchisees. I'm very attached to them. I kind of think of them as my extended family. I don't really mind if they contact me anytime, even Christmas Day. I don't mind because it's like my kids in a way. And that gives me a reason for getting up in the morning, a reason for living. And I get great delight in helping somebody. And I really get trouble when they get into trouble, like you do with your kids. Well, you're obviously quite young, but you do. You worry about them. And I'm a bit like that with my franchisees. That's a very emotional thing. When I started this thing, I thought maybe, I said to somebody said, "How big do you think you might grow?" And I said, maybe if it works well, I could have 100 franchisees. It was quite unexpected. But I think a lot of that is that obsession, looking after customers really, really well. You get more customers. Looking after franchisees really, really well and caring about them, you get more franchisees. And then too, this obsessional thing about customer service, I just kept on wanting to do better. And as we developed systems to do that and better IT and so forth, as our complaints went down, the volume of leads just went up dramatically, far more than I expected. I mean, I kind of theoretically thought it would happen, but it just did. It was astonishing. In the early days of gyms, very difficult to find clients. We actually had, because I was trying to grow this business quite fast. I had of canvassers knocking on doors because it was so hard to find clients. Now, in recent years, we knock back hundreds of thousands of leads a year, despite the fact we spend less per franchisee on advertising than in the old days, and yet most of them are flat out year round. And that level of customer service has risen, and the complaints have gone down. And we measured this very carefully. The reaction from the public is extraordinary.
Yeah, fantastic. Wow. So in 1989, was it 1989 that you started franchising?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So what made you decide to franchise? What made you decide to go from the Jim's Mowing to franchise this business?
Well, mostly fear, actually, because I had this was little business puddling along, building up and selling lawn mowing rounds. Had a few subbies and stuff. Not going anywhere in particular. It just until something better comes along was my view at the time. And then this company called VIP came in from Adelaide, and they were franchised, and they had 250 franchisees. It was huge. I had about 10 subbies. So they had this office, and they had all this logos and all this kind of stuff, which I didn't have a clue about. I just thought they crushed me. Really, really thought they crushed me. And I went, I actually rang up the state manager and said, Willie, I'm Jim's Mowing. I'd like to sort of help you build your company rather than try to compete with you. And he put me in for that one. So I basically rated their show at the expo that year, 1988, the franchising expo. Went up to the stand, said to the guy there, tell me about this, interested in VIP. I'm a terrible liar. If he'd asked me why I wanted, I would say, because I want to compete with you guys, but he didn't ask. He told me all this stuff, and the state manager then came on and kicked me off the stand. He said, that's Jim Penman, don't tell me anything else. And there's some good stuff about this. I can see some benefits to the franchise system, which I had in the past. Maybe I could do something that would work even better for franchisees. So that was what I did. And about 9 months later, after arguing with lawyers, basically, it was frustrating. I signed my franchisee.
So it was really looking at what a competitor was doing and seeing that they've done it, I can do it. I could probably do it better.
Yeah. Well, my was very simple. You see, I was running it from my basement, and they had this fancy office and stuff. And people, there's the two comparisons. They're both selling franchises. So they sort of asked me, why would you buy it from you rather than VIP? Because they're so much better established and stuff. And this office and all this fancy stuff I didn't have. And I said, well, here's a list of my franchisees with their phone numbers. Why don't you go and ring them? And then go and get their list and ring them, which I knew they wouldn't provide. The crucial thing was that my people were happier. That was the simple thing. I made sure they were. I talked to them. I helped them. I gave them work. I just really bled for them. And somebody would ring up and they start talking to me. And the good people will do their research. They would ring and talk to them, and they'd say, well, Jim is great. Looks after us well. It's a great system. It's very fair, very balanced, protection, Jim's is great. So they sold it, not me.
Yeah, I love that. And you do things differently than other franchisors, don't you? Could you give us a few examples of how you do things differently?
Okay. The contract itself right from the beginning was very franchisee balanced. This is what the lawyers used to object to. For example, my franchisees can grow to any extent and their fees don't go up. They pay the same base fee, whether they're turning. I know at least 20 franchisees in gyms turning over more than $1 million a year. Their base fee is the same. It's about $700 a month, something like that. They can work wherever they wish. If a job comes into their territory and they want it, they must get it. But they're not restricted. They can get referrals anywhere they like. They can open branches across the country. It's up to them completely. So it's very fair. They own the right clients. We cannot take clients off them without their consent. Not allowed. Even if we can buy them, but they decide. So that was all in the original contract. They have the right of renewal at the end of the contract period. Even with a franchisor, they don't have it, but they have the right to sell their business at the best price they can get if we don't agree to it. So there's all these things in the original contract that were fair. And then with time, we put other clauses in. For example, the vote out one I told you about before, voting out. And nobody does that. This is the only one in the world as far as I know. And by the way, I can be a franchisor myself. So my franchisees can vote me out as the franchisor. They can change to a different franchisor. So we had a situation in Sydney, cleaning, some time back, where some of the franchisees were getting unhappy about lack of leads. It was divided into two different regions. One of them, the people were getting unhappy about lack of leads. And I pointed out to the franchisor that they were getting less leads per franchisee than the guy in the other half of the city of Sydney. And I said, if you keep that up, your franchises are going to start bleeding across the boundaries. They'll shift from your region to his. So, he immediately boosted the advertising to make sure they had enough work. We can even change to a different division in gyms, and the franchise has no say. So somebody not very happy with one division can shift to something else. And all these powers to franchisees, which basically gives everybody a very strong incentive to think about a franchisee as being the main person. And we also, in recent years, we've actually given them veto power of a change to their own manual. So if we want to change the franchisee manual, we have to ask them. If they disagree, we can't do it. They've actually had knocked back some changes, which we thought was in one. So it's incredibly democratic in a sense that even though they're in charge, they have enormous powers. And culture of gyms is very, very pro-franchisee. We had somebody, a guy called Brian Duckett, come out and speak to franchisors at one of our conferences some years back, and he'd be involved in dozens and dozens of different franchising systems. And he said he's seen nothing like our culture, which is very pro-franchisee. How can we look after franchisees? How can we make them more happy, more successful? It was really different to anything he'd ever seen before. Like during COVID in Melbourne, we couldn't work. We were forbidden to work, which was crazy and really brutal and necessary. And we didn't charge any fees, of course. But, in that time, my franchisors actually worked harder than they did normally because they were talking to franchisees and encouraging them and supporting them and helping them and sometimes giving them financial help and all kinds of things. And they helped each other. That culture of caring, very powerful. And I'm more proud of that than anything, much more proud than the numbers, I have to say. The fact that this idea that franchisees matter and that we look after people is more important than anything.
Wow. Yes.
They approach me, they'll want to do things like sometimes they can be a bit soft. They can be a bit soft on complaints and they have to take a tougher line. Or sometimes they're a little bit too slow to accept to charge fees. Sometimes they need to toughen them, but they have this caring attitude. It's cool to see.
Yeah, you must be really proud of that. It sounds like a really, supportive environment where everyone feels like they belong, but everyone feels like they have a say as well. Very
Yes. I'd like to say everyone, it's not everybody. We have our malcontents too. A lot of people think I'm brutal and hard-hearted and stuff, and especially when there's complaints, systematic complaints, I can be very tough. You do need to do better. If you don't, you can't stay with us. You can go independent, but you can't stay if you don't look after customers better. So they get upset about me sometimes.
How do you balance that in terms of, being fair, but also being strict and making sure the right thing's done and supporting the franchisees? How do you balance that?
It's no different to children. Okay. When you're a parent, you love your kids, don't you? I mean, sure you do. How old are your kids?
4 and 2.
4 and 2. Beautiful age. All right. Okay. You love your kids very much and you want to have best for them. But sometimes that means you've got to tell them what to do, even when they don't particularly want to. Okay. They need to go to bed or obey you or help with the chores or whatever the story is, or not using proper language, this kind of thing. So it's because you care for them, you got to be tough for them, tough with them. And if you don't, and if you're not tough enough, then you're not going to have, you're not doing your job as a parent, are you? So it's kind of the same idea, really. Yes, you've got to be tough. I've got to say to somebody, look, luckily, I know you complain about the complaint system, but the fact that you're getting too many complaints, you need to work out why. It's not good enough just to blame the system or the client or your franchisor or me. What's going wrong? What are you doing? And then we send them a tough message, like a letter or even a breach notice, which is very upsetting. And sometimes they can't sleep at night. But you've got to do this because you care about their welfare. And in the end, if they really, really can't do it, then you have to let them go, which means they can go independent if they wish. We just let them go. They can sell their business if that's possible, but they can't stay there because it's not working for them and it's really damaging my other franchisees. So you have to have a tough line.
Yeah. And do you have situations where, people are really, think it's too strict and there's a lot of complaints about it, but then when they turn around and they actually come to your way of thinking, but no, you were right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think one of the nicest messages I ever get when we have a system of monitoring complaints, and there's a warning letter, and then there's a breach notice. But if after that the complaints drop off, they get an automatic reminder to say congratulations, and that's a really nice thing to be able to do. And they often reply to me and I say, "Well done, that's fantastic. I'm so pleased." I mean, that's a really good finding. Also, it's one of the greatest satisfaction too is when people are struggling in any way and you can do something that helps them. And sometimes it does take some fairly tough talking. Like you'll get a franchisee who's new, who's not getting enough leads. And I had to come back to them quite toughly and say, we have a system called pay for work guarantee. You need to do these jobs, this messages, use this, do this. And if they actually come back to me and say, I did that, it's working, my cash business is building, thank you. That's a really wonderful feeling of achievement.
Yeah, I get. What do you look for in franchisees? Because I'm assuming it's not just anyone can open a franchisee.
No,
What do you
it's one of my founding principles. That I wasn't going to accept people that I wasn't happy with, because I used to sell lawn mowing rounds, and I knew that if somebody didn't have a good attitude towards customer service, as shown by our sort of training days, they tend to fail. So I was determined not to do that, and my competitors didn't do it. VIP, they didn't select anybody; they just took anybody who had the money, and that's quite common in service franchising. Not in retail like McDonald's, but service franchising, they tend to take anybody. I've always had a very strict policy. In fact, a franchisor who is found not to due proper discretion can be let go. It's a really serious offence. We won't renew their regional franchise if they do that. So we look for. I usually find trialing days is the best. Put a person out on the road, and now for lawn mowing, for example, they'll be shown what to do. Okay, you mow around the edges, then you mow straight lines. If there's a hose in the corner of the lawn, there's usually not much grass there, just a few sprigs, a bit of leaves, but you pick it up, you wind it on the garden, and you mow to the edge. Every blade of grass got to be cut. That's kind of the principle. Now, you tell a person to do that. You might tell them twice. This is my trainers, not me. At the end of that time, they can't pick it up. Then they're not suitable because they're not listening. They're not learning. They just know what to do, and they're not going to listen to what you say. That's a big danger sign. Or a person turns up late. They're supposed to leave at 8:00. Everybody's loaded. They turn up late, 8:20. They don't apologize. That's a very bad sign, because somebody's waiting. Their whole day is waiting to go out with them. That kind of thing. You look at, it's easy to pick the good ones. Good franchisees are going to be people who ask a lot of questions, who've done their research. How much do you know about the company? Are you looking at the competitors? They should look at everybody. They should be dressed appropriately. They should communicate properly. Now, a lot of our franchisees are actually immigrants, so their English isn't perfect. But as far as that's concerned, obviously they've got to be understandable. Look for a whole stack of different things. Good attitude. You don't want somebody who just says, how much can I make, as if it's a job. That's not the sensible question. I mean, it is reasonable, but it's got to be more sophisticated than that. It's not a job. It's a business. It's your business.
Yeah.
I'm not going to guarantee you anything. We have a guaranteed income, but you have to do free services to pay for it, find people to go, and that's not always easy.
Yeah. And
In
fact,
that's where they've got what it takes. But most people who've got like $30,000 off to spend, $25,000, $30,000, they're usually reasonably competent.
Yeah. I like what you say about the research. Have they researched you and your competitors? That just shows that they're in it. They want to do this. They want to know more. I think if you just show up, how much money can I make? Is your heart really in it?
Well, yeah, it's sensible businesses. I mean, why would you go and spend even $25,000 without spending a couple of hours making a few phone calls? I'm astonished that people can do so little research. They just don't do those basic. I mean, even for me, that's a lot of money. If I could spend an hour and maybe not make a mistake of that nature, I would certainly spend it. Why would you go into things? Something like that's just got no sense. They should research you. They should have been watching. There's so much around these days. They should be watching stuff and learning and then asking sensible questions. If a person would come to me to buy a franchise and they had a big pan of questions, and they often be quite apologetic, and I'm thinking, no, this is great. I love this person.
Yes, yeah. I've had it before in a past job. We were interviewing someone, and at the end of the interview, say, "Do you have any questions for me?" And she had like a list of questions. It's great.
It's a good sign, isn't it? Well, it's playing for a job too. Yes, if somebody comes in and they know a fair bit about the company and they have good questions to ask, and it's what you look for. It's the same thing.
Yeah. So, what would you say your leadership style is, Joe?
You have to ask other people. Fairly passionate, very emotional, quite blunt, but preach the same message. It's the servant leadership thing, and I think people know I mean it because I walk the walk. I don't just talk about it. I do it, and everybody knows that. So it's kind of it's funny though, and since I've become sort of well known, people kind of have this awe-struck attitude sometimes, and it's very, very odd because I'm pretty ordinary in a lot of ways. People who know me well aren't impressed at all, not one slightest bit, but strangers are. Look, I'm very visionary. I always think long term. The worst thing you can do is think short term, gouging profit all the time. I like to save money, but you've got to keep the basics. You never drop your service. You never drop what you do for people. You've always got to try and improve. One of the great things about automation is that you can actually give better service and lower cost. It's phenomenally good. But I don't run a business primarily with money in mind. Just give you an example. Forbes came to interview me earlier this year, and Forbes is, as you know, it's a magazine about wealth. I said, you've really got the wrong person because first of all, I'm a lot more famous than I'm rich in any case. But second, wealth isn't even in my top 10 priorities. It just isn't. I could make a lot more in all kinds of different ways, but I'm just not going to do it. One of the things I most fear is if I'm not going to protect my franchisee, somebody comes in and grabs hold of gyms and starts ripping people off, which they could do, and turn to make a heap of money. I've actually put a clause in all my new contracts, as from last year, which says that the majority share control of ownership of gyms group cannot be sold without the written consent of a majority of franchisees. Both parties said that would dramatically cut the value of your business. And I said, good. First of all, I don't intend to sell it. And secondly, the thing I most fear is that somebody else will hurt my franchisees and they will rip them off. As happened to so many great brands in the past. When people like Retail Food Group come in, they do disgusting things. They're just greedy for money. I just always think it's the long term. You've got to keep it in mind. The owner of the company is not the most important person. Everybody matters. You've got to make money, of course, otherwise the whole thing falls apart. But you've got to look after, in our sense, particularly franchisees, but also clients as well. Suppliers and staff, of course.
So you built that in to protect your franchisees and your brand that you've worked so hard to build.
Yeah.
When Forbes came to interview you, did you show them your shoes? Quite a few of the leaders that I've interviewed for this podcast all talk about, having the ability to have fun and not take yourself too seriously in business and in their growth. And I've really noticed a trend between all of them. Is this the same for you? Is that important to you to keep having fun in your life?
Oh yeah, I have a great life. I enjoy my life very much. I am as blessed as any man on the face of the earth could be. I have a great business. I have an amazing wife. I have great kids. I have a great church. I have a great mission in my research program. It's not about piling up money. I'm very interested in the subject of happiness too. People have this extremely wrong attitude that happiness is just about piling up more and more wealth. Really, it's not. Past a certain level of income makes very little difference how much money you have. But what really doesn't work is status goods. Like expensive clothes and house and car and that kind of stuff too. They really don't add anything significant to your satisfaction. It's very briefly, but after a few months, it's gone. Nothing there. But things that really make people happier, experiences, sharing, society, community, friendship, those kind of things. And giving your money away is actually the best thing you can do with money to make yourself happy. You actually get an enormous boost of happiness from helping other people when you're involved with what you're doing. I believe life should be joyful. And we're in a very fortunate situation. We're a wealthy, safe country with incredible medical advances. I'm grateful every day. I thank God every day for the wonderful world that we have.
Well, on that point, you talked there about your faith and believing in God. And was it it was when you were 28 that you found Christianity? Could you take us back to there? Like what was happening in your life, and how has it helped you throughout your life since then?
Well, I was, I suppose, interested, but also antagonistic in a way. I would argue against people who believed in God. I was notorious at that at school. And I remember going to a Billy Graham concert and making fun of people who went down the front, which is pretty awful. But that's the kind of obnoxious kid I was, and still am, I suppose. But I was interested, I suppose. I had this felt need somehow, and what actually helped me away too was I was doing my research program trying to understand how societies work, and one of the things that became obvious over the years of doing my PhD was that religions were very effective ways of helping people to achieve the best. And in fact, the key to what makes society works, things like restraints on sexual behavior, for example, and the sanctity of marriage and the way you treat children and all those kinds of, even things like fasting and Sabbath keeping and so forth, had enormous sense to them. So I could understand that this religion that I thought as being very irrational was actually incredibly powerful and sensible, and it was the best way to a good life. And that kind of, in a way, opened my experience. I harked to something different. But the main thing, actually, I was just wandering through our union during orientation week, and I got chatting to some people in the Christian Union stand. Just got talking, and I liked them, and they invited me to go on this retreat. In the first morning of the retreat, they were supposed to sit and have some quiet time, like prayer and so forth. And I couldn't pray because I didn't believe in God, so I had this book, this like textbook, and a red pen, and I just started to write down things that were going through my mind, and I just thought through that exercise. God called me. I sat down atheist and got up a Christian, which is sudden and unexpected and surprised a lot of people too, because I've been so obnoxious.
Yeah, yeah. Do you recall what that was? What you felt that calling was at that point?
Just a sense that God called me.
Mm, mm,
Or I'm here.
yeah, yeah. And how does it show up with you in your daily life and throughout your business and things? Is your faith really guided you?
Yes. Look, if you understand what we do in gyms, the whole concept is servant leadership. And it's the same thing as washing the disciples' feet, which is something I talk about a lot, but it's washing somebody's feet was a really degrading, dirty job in those days. It was something that slaves did. It was really low because people had very filthy feet because they'd walk in sandals on dirty roads and stuff. No bitumen or anything. It was just dirty. Occasionally, you had a very revered rabbi. His disciples might wash his feet as a sign of respect. Jesus washed his disciples' feet. Now, a lot of what Jesus taught was very much in the pattern of Judaism at the time, and which is a great faith and a great culture. But this was really revolutionary stuff. That idea of servant leadership is really central. My franchisees don't work for me. I work for them. They're my clients. They're my family. They're my people that I have to look after. That attitude is really ingrained. And there's so much too in the Gospels. Like Jesus said, it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than the camel to go through the eye of a needle. That's very something to keep in mind, because wealth is corrupting. Wealth makes you proud. Wealth makes you think that there's a Proverbs number 30. I think it's verse 7 and 8, and it says, God, don't let me be too poor or too rich. If I'm too prosperous, then I might forget you. If I'm too poor, I might steal. And that's we just heard that in church on Sunday, and that's a great idea. And I am obviously wealthy by most people's standards, but at the same time, it's dangerous. You've got to watch yourself. That I'm not becoming proud. I'm not becoming puffed up. I'm not putting something ahead of God. So I always see money as something that's entrusted. It's not something that we own. It's something that God's given us and said, okay, here's some wealth. What can you do with it?
Yeah. And a lot of your wealth, it goes back into funding your research. Is that correct?
I net income, about 90%, it goes back into my research with the honest amount. And that amount, we tithe 10%. So it's kind of, look, we live very well. Honestly, by normal standards, we have a nice house, and, you know, I don't go around with ragged clothes and stuff. The whole books and the fruit I want. So we live well. But at the same time, nothing even remotely close to the money I make. My kids, which is also for the sake of the kids too, because they would have some sort of, especially my younger ones, would have some theoretical sense we were quite well off. Where's the mansions? Where's the luxury holidays? Where's the servants? Where's all this stuff that you're supposed to have if you're rich? No, sorry. You see, they've always had a good attitude towards money. They save well and they work hard. My youngest son done a work at McDonald's, which is great. Good training, terrible food, but great training. They just got that attitude because they're not brought up spoiled rich kids.
And I think that's really important, right? Because if things come too easy to us, it doesn't serve us well in the future. You know, if you give your kids everything they could possibly want, then they don't have that drive and that work ethic to go out and make something for themselves. So I think it's a really valuable lesson.
Life wasn't meant to be easy. It's not good for us.
No.
One of the things that's interesting in my research, what we've come across, is the idea of dopamine reaction systems. If you have, like, an example is a drug like cocaine. If you take cocaine, it actually gives a surge of dopamine to your brain, and that, but then if you take it again, it's a lesser effect. And the reason for that is because if you put surges of dopamine into your brain, the brain reacts by becoming less sensitive to dopamine, and you need more and more to feel okay, which means you feel miserable if you don't have it. And it tends to have really bad effects on character. Well, there's a lot of things that have the same effect, and leisure is one of them. If you're not working, you're doing something to your brain that makes your dopamine system less reactive. And the same thing with junk food, and the same thing with too much in the sense of social media and a whole lot of other things like that have the same kind of effect. They actually undermine character. So our whole brains are built upon the idea that you've got to have a reasonable toughness. Too much of a good thing is not good for you. And that applies to everything, to drugs, to leisure, to gambling, to social media, to overly big concern with your own status and success and pride and wealth and popularity. They all have a really, really bad effects. They undermine character. It's not good for people, and it's not good for kids.
No, not at all. Not at all. Where there's light, there's dark, right? And there's a reason for that, I think. Yeah. So what's next for you, Jim? What's in the you said you're a visionary. What's in the future? What's happening?
Well, in the business, a lot of exciting things going on. We've got a program called Jimbo, which we're developing for franchisees, which is really far advanced now, and they're starting to adopt it. That's going to really help to improve productivity. It does things like remind them if they haven't actually contacted a client, for example, which reduce the level of complaints. And there's other things in it which will make it easier for them to give good service. Also, they'll be able to do things like, down the track of it, one of the things we're most looking forward to is the ability to have clients, if the franchisee wishes, the client can book a job directly into their diary. We'll know where they are and sort of how much time they've got. But instead of saying we'll get a call back, book it straight in. Ability to be able to sell surplus regular clients to somebody else and buy them if they wish to, those kinds of things. And there's a whole lot of stuff happening with that should dramatically improve customer service and also franchisee profitability. So it's very exciting. That's actually, a lot of that's going to be done by the end of the year, and early next year we'll do even more. So that'll be great. We'll have a financial package set up so they don't need anything like Xero or QuickBooks or anything at all. It'll just be built into the system. No charge at all.
Fantastic.
And there's the possibility of taking that to the general contractor community too, and providing it free and so forth, and then doing a whole lot of things that could be very, very big. So technology is an extremely exciting area. My research is really, really interesting. We have tested like 100,000 drugs to have the effects we want, because what we're trying to do is develop a treatments to have this beneficial effects of religious involvement or food restriction, very similar. So we've actually been understanding the epigenetics. We've actually been testing them in human brain cells, hugely automated process, and we're about to test 9 that have proved very effective in animals to see if we can get the effect, which will include things like being better parents and so forth. That's how you'll measure it. So that's exciting. We've got somebody, we're assigned one of the top CRISPR experts in Australia. CRISPR is a way of directly going into the genome and changing things, in our case, epigenetically, but very targeted. That's really exciting. So about this book I'm writing, I'm still working on it. We're waiting for some research findings now. That'll go out early to mid next year. And I think it'll make a splash because people are starting to panic all over the world about the collapsing fertility, and they're trying to get these and not working. And I know exactly why they're not working. What you need to do is to change your character. And we've got proposals. So I'm optimistic that enough people will listen to this to actually fund the research to get this thing to work, in which case we will be able to turn around society.
Wow.
But some incredibly exciting things happening in my world.
Yeah, a lot happening. What's the title of the book?
Birth rate crisis.
Birth rate crisis. And early next year, it'll be out.
Early to mid next year. Yeah. We've got some really good experiments going that really backs up a lot of the stuff or tests a lot of the stuff that we're doing. So that's going to be interesting, and I'll do a lot of publicity for that. And I may have to travel. I hate travel normally, but if I have to, I will. It could change everything. It could change the world. I don't know. I mean, it sounds very grandiloquent, but I don't think anybody understands what's happening at the moment. Why birth rates are collapsing. They think it's money, but it's not. It's priorities, and why you're getting rising deaths of despair, and why people are more and more lonely and miserable and cut off from each other, and why suicide's going up, for heaven's sake, in a wealthy society. You know, the lowest levels of suicide are people born during the Great Depression. Yes, we think of prosperity as being so wonderful, but it has some very bad effects.
So what's the mission with all of this? What do you hope when you release this book and do this research? What's the mission? What do you hope for?
Well, basically, we want to develop treatments that will basically reinforce the good side of our character, the side of faith, of self-discipline, of hard work. We want to be able to help people to achieve that more readily. Interestingly enough, some of the weight loss drugs like the Wegovy and so forth seem to be having effects of this nature. We are testing those for these kinds of effects. So this, basically, look, if we found a treatment that's effective, what would we really work for is to treat people like depression and drug addiction and so forth, because it helps have a more disciplined and long-term view on life. That'd be the basic initial aim for treatment. We can help people develop better character, and then they will want to have more children and be better citizens too. This kind of thing.
It's fascinating. I'll be watching this space and looking for the book when it comes out. We're coming towards the end. I could speak to you for hours, Jim, but I've got a quick fire round that I always do before the last question. So, what's one thing people would be surprised to know about you?
I know people know a lot about me. I'm a real cheapskate. Notorious miser. Do not like spending money. I hate travel, and I'm a lot more famous than I'm rich. People think I'm a billionaire, and then this kind of stuff. I'm not even a fraction of that way. I sometimes think I'm a bit fraudulent. People come to me to secrets of being successful, and yet in financial terms, I'm pretty well off. But my goodness gracious, the BRW wanted me to join the rich 250, and I said, "Don't be ridiculous. I'm not even close to that." Or you talk about the $1 billion turnover of the business, which is probably about right. We're probably turning over, my franchisee is probably turning over $1 billion a year, but the fact of the matter is only a tiny portion that comes to me. So I'm not nearly as rich as you think I am.
Yeah. We've got all that research about it.
Yeah. Well, as I said, most of my income goes into research anyway, because it's just not my priority. So I think that, I don't know. That's what I like people to know. I don't think money is the be-all and end-all. I sometimes I feel a bit of a fraud if people are coming to me to say, how do you become wealthy? Because it's not really my aim.
Yeah. got a much bigger mission, but it sounds of it. What's your favorite division in Jim's group?
Mowing.
Mowing, has it got a special place in your heart?
Well, yes. I mean, I was a mowing contractor 15 years. To me, mowing is really, it's a wonderful, wonderful lifestyle. It's healthy. It's outdoors. It's just great. I love it. Gardening now is my hobby. So yeah, mowing is good. I don't understand how somebody would want to clean houses or carpets or do anything else. But to me, gardening is just the best manual job there is. But then, luckily, people have different priorities. You know, somebody who loves dogs, they would think dog wash, oh, fantastic, and they love it. They think it's the greatest thing ever. Great working with dogs, and they're friends with the dogs, and they're just different people. Or somebody likes cars, for example. You know, to them, cleaning cars is a wonderful job because they love cars so much. See, that's the point. You got to fit. You got to fit what the temperament is. To me, lawn mowing, gardening, particularly gardening. And like we get with spade, you know, digging out gardens. I love that so much. It's just so therapeutic.
Oh, I love it. You see your face lights up when you talk about it. What's your proudest moment outside of business?
I hear people being successful. I hear stories about people who've done well, who've turned their lives around. I mean, that really is something amazing. You have somebody who's one of the things I do is I ring franchisees on their 10-year anniversaries, and you get stories about people who've seen their kids growing up, who've turned from being somebody who's 50 years old and a financial failure, and 10 years later they've got their own house and a boat, and their whole life is different. I mean, that is amazing to hear. And then when your kids do great things too, you're so impressed. I mean, I know that sounds trivial, but we had a family gathering about a week ago, and my son Aaron, 16 years old, he just basically did the whole washing up, which is a lot of us too. There was about 9 of us there, and he just got up and washed up and cleaned up, and I was so impressed. I thought, wow, this is a great kid.
And you didn't have the animals. That's impressive for 16. Didn't even need to.
Yes, you know, when he was 8 years old, we used to do fasting. Every month we do a fast where you don't eat certain things for a whole month, like the Lenten fast, and he would do it with me, and that was great. So we see your children. Now, mind you, Aaron has also got his weaknesses. He tends to get his assignments in late, which his mother and I get quite upset about, and so he's got his weaknesses. But when you see somebody doing something that's really good like that, I know it sounds small, but are you with your own kids when they grow up? You'll see them doing something which shows that they've really taken the lesson. They're really helpful to somebody else, that they're really reliable and hardworking and stuff. You take pride in that sort of thing. You really do, and that's a great glow of satisfaction.
Yeah, I can relate. It's usually the smallest things. Like even when I just see my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old just playing nicely, just the little conversations you overhear, like I almost cry just because I'm just like, oh, it's often those small moments. It's not the big moments.
Yeah, it's great. The kids get on well with the other two. We have this, especially our youngest 4 that Lee and I have, and they're just such great kids, and they get on really well together, and they care for each other, and they're just good people. I mean, there's always things you'd like them to be doing better. Why don't they get married and start having kids, for example? But they're great.
Beautiful. Well, this has been a great conversation, Jim. I always end with the last question as I kind of pass it on gift to the listeners. So, you've built one of the most recognizable brands in Australia. What's one lesson or story you pass on to someone listening who wants to build a legacy such as yours?
Don't focus primarily on money. It's a good. You've got to make money what you do, but do something that you love. Service industry is a great one to go into because it's not very competitive and there's very little capital involved with it. And just do it well. Look after people. Look after people really, really well. Think of the value of what you're doing. Don't put money first. I think one of the biggest dangers people like speculation. They want to put money into something because they think somebody will pay more, like crypto or something like that, which is gambling. That's a really bad thing to do. You should never ever put money into something simply to make money out of it. You should always see some value in what you're doing. So how can you help other people in some way, provide a service that will help them? I think the service industry is, I mean, I'm biased in that one. I think the service industry is wonderful in that particular way. We reckon we've created more millionaires than any company in the history of Australia because you can start with very little and you can build anything depending on, and we'll show you how. So find something and just do it better. Be endlessly self-critical. Look at what you do all the time and say, I've made a mistake. What can I do? How can I learn from this? That is so powerful. Humility is one of the most underrated virtues when it comes to business. To say, I've done the wrong thing. I'm sorry, made a mistake. Okay, what do I learn? How do I not? You don't get buried by your mistakes. You just got to say, what can I do better? And if I look back even a year ago, I reckon I could point to mistakes that I've made 2 years ago, terrible mistakes. Obviously making them, but then trying to learn.
Well, yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jim. It's been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you joining me today. Thank you.
Good to talk to you.